The thing that wept in the dark.
Ethan Ward had always believed that the world kept its horrors far away from quiet towns like Graybridge. The place was small, peaceful, and forgotten, tucked between forests thick enough to swallow sound and old enough to remember things people never should. But everything changed the night the screaming began. It started with the dogs. At first, they simply refused to go outside after dusk, ears pinned back, tails tucked, eyes cast toward the tree line as if something watched them from the shadows. People thought it was wolves returning to the region. Graybridge had no shortage of rumors about that forest, the Deepwood, but wolves were believable, acceptable. But then the dogs disappeared, one by one. No bodies, no tracks, just empty collars on porches by morning. Ethan, who worked the night shift at the local sawmill, was always the first to hear things. Metal groaning in the wind, trees snapping. Once he thought he heard a voice calling from beyond the fence, a long, broken sound like someone learning to cry for the very first time. He told himself it was nothing, but deep down he felt it, some truth crawling through the dark. Something was out there. Something wrong. On the third week of disappearances, a storm hit. One of those cold autumn tempests that made the sky bruise purple and black. When Ethan's shift ended, he found the road home blocked. A tree snapped in half like a toothpick. He had two choices: wait in the freezing rain or take the old footpath through the forest. He chose the forest. The path was narrow and choked with fog. His flashlight flickered. The storm howled through the branches, but beneath that, there was another sound, wet, shuddering, breathing. Ethan froze. The beam of his flashlight caught something pale behind a tree, smooth like skin but stretched too thin, trembling like it was barely holding itself together. It retreated instantly, slipping into the darkness without a footstep. Ethan ran the rest of the way. Behind him, something crawled, fast, uneven, dragging itself like it didn't quite understand how legs worked. He didn't look back, because whatever it wasn't human. Graybridge woke the next morning to the news. Tom Henderson was missing. He'd been out late fixing a fence near the woods. No one found anything except a piece of his boot, split open, soaked with a strange translucent slime. Ethan knew. He knew it was connected to what he saw. That night, the town gathered at the diner, whispering over coffee. Sheriff Hale tried to calm them, but even he looked shaken. When Ethan told him what he'd seen, the sheriff went pale. "You're not the first to say something like that," Hale muttered. "But what you saw doesn't match any animal I've ever heard of." Then, leaning closer, "Whatever's in those woods, we might not be dealing with something natural." The truth came from the least expected place. Ethan's 82-year-old neighbor, Ruth Holloway. A quiet woman with too many cats and too few visitors. She invited Ethan inside after overhearing him talking with the sheriff. Her house smelled of dust and lavender. She sat him down at a worn wooden table and lit a candle. "I saw it too," she whispered, "but not recently. 50 years ago." Ethan stared. Ruth nodded slowly, hands trembling as they wrapped around the candle flame's glow. There was a research facility out in Deepwood, government-funded, secret. They said they were studying accelerated healing, genetic rewriting, creating something that could survive any environment. Her voice cracked, but something escaped.
She looked toward the forest as thunder rolled above them. It wasn't a creature. It was a man, a volunteer. She swallowed hard. Now it's neither. The sheriff organized a search party, though half the town refused to step foot near the forest. Ethan joined, fear knotting his stomach, but something deeper pushing him forward, the need to know, to understand. They walked deep into Deepwood, lights cutting thin lines through the mist. Strange claw marks shredded the bark of the trees, too high to belong to wolves, too jagged for bears. Then came the stench. Rotting meat mixed with metal. The smell of something alive that shouldn't be. They found Tom Henderson in a clearing. What was left of him. His body was twisted, bones bent out of place, as if someone had tried to reshape him, melted him. The skin on his chest was pulled open in wide, symmetrical lines, almost surgical. And next to him, drawn in the soil with shaking fingers, "Help me." But Tom hadn't written it. The letters were too uneven, too desperate, too childlike. Something tried to imitate handwriting. Something that remembered what it once was.
The group panicked, guns raised, voices cracking. Then the forest went silent. Completely. No wind, no birds, no breath. A figure stepped into the beam of Ethan's flashlight. 7 feet tall, skin pale and stretched, almost translucent, showing pulsing veins underneath. Its limbs were too long, fingers ending in soft, wet points. Where a face should have been was a melted mass, like wax left near heat, except 2 sunken eyes stared from deep within, glowing faintly blue. It opened its mouth, but instead of a roar, it sobbed. A broken, wet, shuddering cry, as if begging for someone to fix it, someone to end it. Its body convulsed with each sob, muscles twitching like they were trying to rearrange themselves. The sheriff fired first. The mutant screamed, and the sound tore through the clearing, high, sharp, and agonizing, like metal scraping bone. Lights exploded, trees snapped, and the hunt became a slaughter.
Ethan ran, branches slashing his arms, mud swallowing his boots. Behind him, people screamed one by one, cut short, choked, muffled. The creature didn't kill out of hunger. It killed out of confusion, pain, desperation. He stumbled into a ravine, falling hard, vision blurring. When he looked up, the creature was standing above him, trembling, dripping rain and blood. It leaned close. So close, Ethan could see the faint outline of a human jaw beneath the warped skin. Not fully gone, not fully lost. "Help," it gurgled in a voice made of fragments and suffering. Ethan froze, tears mixing with rain. He reached out without thinking. The creature jerked back and vanished into the night.
Graybridge buried the dead with quiet words and hollow prayers. The sheriff was gone. Half the town fled. Ethan didn't sleep for days, because Ruth had one final truth to tell him. The experiment hadn't created one mutant. It was a program. Dozens of subjects. Dozens of transformations. Most died. Some escaped. And the one Ethan saw wasn't the only one wandering Deepwood. Somewhere in the darkness, another shape moved. Then another. Ethan heard the sobbing again, farther this time but unmistakable. More voices answered from deeper within the trees, soft and broken. The forest was no longer silent. It was full. And they were coming home.
Ethan Ward didn't remember falling asleep. For nights now, exhaustion hit him the way waves hit a drowning man, sudden, violent, unstoppable. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that face again, or what remained of a face, a melted mask stretched over bone. Those blue eyes, faint, dying, pleading. He woke every morning with the feeling that someone had stood beside his bed while he slept, watching, waiting, studying his breathing, as if learning how to do it. And always, always, he heard the echo of that broken voice crawling out of the darkness. Help.
Graybridge wasn't the same after the search party massacre. Most people left within a week. Families stuffing belongings into cars, engines blowling through the fog as they fled without looking back. Houses became hollow shells. Stores closed. Even the church locked its doors, its priest never seen again. Ethan stayed. He didn't know why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear of what would happen if the creature wandered into another town. Or maybe it was the terrifying truth he couldn't escape. He felt connected to it. To him. To whatever was left of the man inside that abomination. And sometimes, when Ethan walked past the tree line at dusk, he felt eyes following him from the shadows, but not hostile. Lonely. Curious. Almost human. Ruth Holloway knocked on Ethan's door one night. She was pale, trembling, holding a stack of brittle papers tied with twine. Government documents. Maps. Photos. Before Ethan could ask anything, she whispered, "They came back." "Who?" he asked. "The people from the facility, the ones who made them." She swallowed hard. "There were men in black trucks last night, searching the forest. They're looking for the mutant you saw." Ethan froze. The implication hit like ice water down his spine. "They want it alive?" Ruth shook her head slowly. "No. They want to erase it. Erase all traces, including anyone who knows the truth." She pushed the papers into his hands. "These are the files my husband stole before he disappeared. Everything about Project ReGenesis." Ethan untied the twine with shaking fingers. Inside were pictures dated over 50 years ago. A group of volunteers smiling outside a military building. Strange diagrams of tissue regeneration. DNA charts with sections blacked out. Medical notes referring to subjects by number, not name. Records of cellular overgrowth events. Disciplinary reports warning that Subject 12 exhibited self-awareness of mutation progression. One photo showed a man in his 30s with tired eyes but a kind smile. Name, Samuel Reed. Subject ID, 12. Status, terminated. Unconfirmed body recovery. Ethan's heart froze. The mutant he'd seen. The height. The eyes. The shape of the jaw beneath the warped flesh. Samuel Reed had once been human. Fog rolled across Graybridge like a living thing that night. Thick, cold, swallowing the street lamps until the town seemed drowned beneath a ghostly sea. Ethan sat by his window, Unable to sleep, Ruth's files spread across the table. At 2:14 a.m., the house lights flickered, then died. In the darkness, something tapped gently on the glass. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Ethan's breath locked in his throat. Slowly, shaking, he drew back the curtain. At first, he saw nothing, just darkness. Then the fog shifted. A shape stood beneath the street lamp, tall, trembling, its body twitching beneath sagging skin. Its head tilted when it saw him. Those faint blue eyes glowed like dying embers. It lifted a hand. Its fingers were long and soft, as if half melted. It pressed them gently to the window. A streak of translucent fluid smeared across the glass. Ethan's entire body froze. Then the creature did something he never expected. It slowly, painfully, placed its other hand over where its chest used to resemble a heart, as if trying to remember a gesture, as if it meant, "I don't want to hurt you." Ethan whispered through the glass, "What happened to you?" The creature flinched at the sound of his voice. Then its jaw unhinged, twisting, forcing out a single cracked rasp. "Help." Its knees buckled. Its spine twisted with a wet crunch. It collapsed to the ground, spasming violently. Muscles pulsed under its translucent skin, reshaping, bulging, deforming further. It screamed, a sound Ethan would carry to his grave. Then the fog shifted. It vanished into the forest, dragging itself toward the forest.
The next morning, black trucks rolled into Graybridge. Men in gray tactical gear swarmed the streets. They carried rifles with tranquilizer needles as long as fingers. Their uniforms had no logo, but Ethan recognized the emblems stitched in faint black on their shoulders. A helix symbol, broken, fragmented, ReGenesis. The sheriff was dead, the police force gone. There was no authority left to question them. Ethan hid in Ruth's house while the soldiers canvassed the town. Some wore thermal visors, others carried equipment that emitted clicking noises as they scanned the forest. They were hunting it. Hunting Samuel. And Ethan realized something. They weren't trying to exterminate him. They were trying to recapture him, alive. Because Samuel Reed wasn't just a monster. He was living evidence of what they'd done. Something priceless. Something dangerous. Something they needed back.
That night, Ethan and Ruth fled into Deepwood, the one place the soldiers avoided unless heavily armed. The forest was alive. Branches moved where no wind blew. Shadows shifted like they had weight. The ground felt warm, as if something pulsed beneath it. They followed a trail of translucent slime, glowing faintly in the darkness. Ruth whispered. There were more subjects, some stronger, some unstable. If Samuel survived, others might have too. The deeper they went, the more unnatural it became. Blackened trees twisted into spirals. Chunks of flesh-like fungus pulsed on bark. Bones, human bones, wrapped in vines that looked disturbingly organic. Then Ethan heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound. Not breathing, not footsteps,
something else. Weeping. Not one voice, dozens, soft, broken, echoing through the trees. Ethan raised his flashlight. Ruth grabbed his arm, trembling. "Don't look." But he did. And in a vast clearing lit by moonlight, Ethan saw them. Crawling shapes, tall shapes, hunched shapes. Dozens of mutated figures drifting like shadows, each weeping softly. Some sobbed like children, some like men, some like animals learning how to cry.
Their skin shimmered with sickly pale light. Their bodies twitched with every breath. Faces were melted, stretched, torn, some still bearing faint fragments of humanity. In the center of them all was Samuel Reed. He stood tallest. His eyes glowed brightest. And when he saw Ethan, he raised his head and emitted a long, gurgling moan. Suddenly, the entire group turned. Dozens of glowing eyes stared at Ethan from the dark. Not hungry, not angry, broken, hopeful. They came to him, arms reaching, bodies trembling, as if he were the only thing in the world that remembered them, as if he was the last human they trusted. Samuel stepped forward, slowly, painfully. Ethan realized something horrifying. Samuel wasn't leading them. He was trying to protect them, from the soldiers, from the world, from what they were becoming. And then the forest exploded with gunfire. ReGenesis had found them. Searchlights cut through the clearing. Bullets tore through the trees, through flesh, through bone. The mutants screeched, convulsing, collapsing. Samuel roared, a sound so loud it shook leaves from branches. The forest became a battlefield of screams and moonlight. Soldiers fired tranquilizers the size of daggers. Some mutants took 10 shots before falling. Others mutated on the spot, muscles bulging, bones cracking outward. Ethan and Ruth ducked behind a fallen log as chaos ripped the world apart. A mutant crawled past them, half its body missing, glowing blue fluid spilling from its wounds. It looked at Ethan with one remaining eye, a human eye, and whispered, "Thank you," before dying. Something in Ethan snapped. These weren't monsters. They were victims, experiments, people who still remembered how to cry, how to fear, how to hope. Samuel charged the soldiers, tearing apart metal shields with mutated strength. Bullets ripped through him, but he kept fighting, protecting the others, protecting Ethan. Then a soldier fired a tranquilizer the size of an arrow straight into Samuel's chest. He staggered, shuddered, fell to his knees, reached toward Ethan with trembling fingers. His faint blue eyes dimmed, and he collapsed. The soldiers swarmed him, strapping chains around his arms, legs, neck, anything to restrain him. They dragged Samuel away like cargo, his body limp, his voice silent. The remaining mutants fled into the forest, wounded, terrified. And Ethan realized the soldiers didn't care how many they killed. They only wanted him. Subject 12. Samuel Reed. The masterpiece that should have never existed.